Ron, let you take it away.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate that overly generous introduction. Is Charlie Bacola on the call, or do you know?
I do not know, Ron. Oh, yes,
Okay.
he is. Charlie is on the call.
Well, you know, I wanted to ask because I'll give you an analogy. There was this old guy that lived through the Johnstown flood, and after he managed to do that for the rest of his life, he just wanted to go around to civic clubs and wherever they could gather up a crowd, and he would tell of his horrific experience of living through the Johnstown flood. That's what he did for the rest of his life. And when he finally died and he went to the pearly gates and told St. Peter, he said, "What am I going to do up here?" He said, "Well," and St. Peter said, "Well, it's your call." He said, "Well, I used to do these long dissertations and talks about experiencing the Johnstown flood. Could I do it up here?" And he said, "Sure." He said, "We'll assemble all the multitudes in heaven," and said, "You can do it here in just a few minutes." He said, "They'll be here instantaneously." The guy said, "Oh, this is great." He said, "This is what I've lived for. It's my whole life." So he was about to be introduced by St. Peter. He said, "Are you ready?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I need to remind you," said, "that Noah is in the audience." So with Charlie is in the audience, I have to be careful.
Yeah,
All right. Let's see. Can I go to share screen? Let me see
should
if
be
this
able to.
works.
Real quick, while you're doing that, I'll chime in. So, we'll do the presentation real quick, and then at the end of the presentation, we will take questions. So, um, at the bottom of your screen, if you're familiar with Zoom and you're an attendee today, you'll see the chat feature, the raise hand feature, and then you could also ask a question verbally if you want. So, just wanted to let you know we will take questions at the end. So, with that, Ron, sorry to interrupt. Take her
No,
back
that's
over.
okay. I just literally finished preparing this thing this afternoon. So this is about a 30,000 foot elevation review of the book and the subject, Big Emma. These are L&N's M1 class 284s. There were 42 of them, and they were nicknamed Big Emmas by the crewmen who first operated them on uh, the KY. I'll, so I don't speak in code. The KY was the LN from Corbin to Cincinnati, DeCourcy and Cincinnati. And then the EK was Eastern Kentucky Division, and the CV was the Cumberland Valley Division. Uh, that's just a few sample pages of the book. Charlie and I primarily slaved over this thing for the better part of a year, and in the buildup, we reached a deal through the L&N Historical Society with Garbley Publishing, and Rudy Garbley just did a tremendous job with it. So uh, I think Charlie would agree. We wouldn't we wouldn't want to start this thing again, but it was a very memorable year's work with Charlie, and all of it virtually. Uh, just a few opening shots of Big Emma. The one in the upper left is one of the Lima engines, and I'll refer to three different orders of the 42 engines. The first 20 were built by Baldwin in 1942. There were no 14. I'm sorry, there were 14 built in 1942, and then there were six built in 1944. And then we'll talk about the Lima Hamilton engines were built in 1949. The one in the upper left is a Lima Hamilton engine. It's departing DeCourcy Yard south of Cincinnati late in the steam era, but it's still assigned to a priority fast freight to Corbin. Lower left is another fast freight going by the depot at Richmond, Kentucky. It's a double header, and we'll talk about how uh, extra engines were ferried from Winchester and Patio back to Corbin on trains. Upper right's a Jack favorite shot that I really love. That's one of the Baldwin engines leaving uh, South Louisville, probably around 53, as I recall. Uh, the picture engine for the Baldwin first Baldwin order was number 1954. One of the things, many things that we learned mechanically about these engines as we poured over documents and photographs. The first 14 engines had a smoke density light. You just see it to the left, or it's centered on the stack. Uh, those were normally associated with the oil burning locomotives, but a lot of coal burners used it. That's so the fireman at night could see the smoke density and see how he's firing, how efficient his firing was. There's another favorite shot of mine. That's at Ravenna, about 1953 or so. You notice all those hoppers that they were repainting at Ravenna. It just has the old reliable stencil, but they don't have the reporting marks and numbers yet. And then there's a shot of one of the M1s well out. Uh, I think is it Hargett? I believe it's Hargett. That's on the EK division. But this is a coal train bound for DeCourcy, and there's another one of those engines behind. Well, for the longest time, I had several friends that said, we ought to do an L&N Big Emma book. And I pushed back and I said, guys, the definitive piece on the M1s was written by our friend Charlie Kastner. Charlie is 76 years old, and his name is at the top of the three co-authors that did this. Uh, in in the late early 70s, I should say, Charlie was working with Dave Morgan, and he he was doing an article that ended up being the entire December 1972 issue of Trains magazine. Well, as Charlie Bacola and Charlie Castor have been friends for a long time as well. Charlie Bacola volunteered with Charlie at the University of Louisville, but somewhere along the line, as Charlie was downsizing, I got word from Charlie B, as I call him, that he had wanted to donate all his files and records and everything from the Big Emma article that was in Trains magazine at 72 to the LNHS. So here came a box from Louisville, about yay thick, and it was full of manila folders full of correspondence, notes, telephone calls, uh, company correspondence, photographs, spec sheets, everything. It was just like manna from heaven. There's just some of the files scattered on my floor. That's from last July. There's some of the photos. And that letter is interesting to me because it's from me to Charlie Kastner in March 22nd, 1972. I was a Spec 5 in the Army at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. I was a clerk, and Charlie and I stayed in touch, and he was picking my brain about what I remembered as a youngster about these locomotives. So that's one of the many things I found in there that I could trace back to myself. So what's that, 52 years ago? So this goes back a ways. There's the cover of the December 72 issue of Trains. Uh, it was painted by Terrell Dickey. And that's, understandably, that's one of my favorite paintings. And Chad has a warm spot in his heart for that one as well. Here we are. There's Charlie Kastner on the left in the left photo, and Charlie Bacola. That they happened to show up on same day with the same outfit, just unplanned. But they were this is at the University of Louisville archives. There in the middle is Charlie Kastner on piano and me on trumpet. All three of us, including Charlie Bacola, are kind of musicians, and Charlie Kastner and I at least played together. We couldn't get Charlie Bacola to get his guitar out and join us, but he could. He's very capable. And the shot on the right is actually that's a fake M1. That's CNO 2716 that Chad and the guys at Kentucky Steam early on converted to an M1 using plastic pipe and cardboard and spray paint and everything else. And so there are the three of us there several years ago, and we had an event before the engine was moved from KRM at their facility at New Haven. Let's talk about what the L&N used before M1s in the coal fields. The L&N built 400 steam locomotives from scratch at the South Louisville shops between 1905 and 1923. Only one locomotive from that group of 400 exists, and that's that 080 in Corbin, Kentucky, that's on display. It's cosmetically restored, but it's 2132. But 1462 is one of the J2A class heavy Mikes that operated in the coal fields. Uh, then, as a result of USRA during World War One, the LN ended up with some heavy USRA Mikes, and they ended up liking those so well they got several duplicates, and including a group with Delta trailing trucks with boosters. The lower right shot is all those guys are on the single engine that made up class uh, J5. That's 1999. It's a three-cylinder Alco three-cylinder engine, um, and that was they assigned that to the EK division. That's the same engine on the upper right there, and you can see the center cylinder quite prominently. One of the guys that we quoted in the book, uh, Chick Geeson, said the guys called this engine Stuttering Lil because of the uneven exhaust beats. And the shot on the left is one of those J4. That's a J4A heavy mic, but this is what they used before M1s. The LN in the steam era was a fairly large railroad that reached St. Louis, East St. Louis, Cincinnati south down to Memphis and to Atlanta, and all the way down along the Gulf Coast through Nashville, Birmingham, Montgomery, and Mobile. There was the Gulf Coast line that went down to New Orleans, and then it extended to the east to Chattahoochee, connected to the Seaboard Airline, actually for a through route to Jacksonville. The At this time on this map, the NC and St. L was still an independent company. It was controlled by the LN, and it was absorbed into the LN in August of 57. You'll take note of that box up there will be marked M1 country. That's this inset. And that of that large system, this is the extent of M1, the Big Emma's operating territory. And you can see Cincinnati at the top of the map on down through the details through Paris, Winchester, Patio. You'll hear that a little bit, and all the way down to Corbin, Kentucky. That was the KY. And that was the initial operating territory of the first 14 M1s. In later years, they operated on the Cumberland Valley Division, which is toward down toward the bottom. That actually goes into my area of Southwest Virginia. That's where I grew up. I was actually born in Kentucky, so that kind of speaks of my Kentucky roots. Then the Eastern Kentucky Division splits off the Patio and goes down through Ravenna, Hazard, and on to Neon. That was a major coal generating line. To the left of to the west side of the map, you see the short line, the LN main line from Cincinnati to Louisville. The M1s operated there primarily to get back and forth to the shop at South Louisville, but they also operated in fast freight service, passenger service, sometimes on troop trains or extra sections. And then we finally found conclusive evidence that the M1s operated some between Louisville and Corbin by way of the Lebanon branch, and that goes down through Lebanon, Kentucky. Not a lot, but they did operate through there, and we couldn't find any photos, but we found documentation that verified it. This is actually at Lima in 1948 or 49. These guys are in the engineering department designing the 1949 order of the 22 M1s. I was struck with a guy's stogie there, and the guy on the left in the background looks like he'd be great in a Brill cream advertisement. Just some select shots. The lower left is of the many drawings that Charlie McCullough was able to find at Kentucky Railway Museum's uh, collection. He had some large scans made. This happens to be of the cylinder. We put that in the book just to illustrate the complexity of a steam locomotive design. Every time I look at that and drawings like that, I'm reminded of just how complex these locomotives are to design, to cast parts and the machine parts that fit all together and work. I mean, it's an incredible amount of skill involved. That wheel lathe is at Lima. That's a Lima photo. And the backhead shot on the right is the backhead of one of the Baldwins. You might note there were some differences between the Baldwins and the Limas, but there were some common characteristics. You see the cylinder pressure, not the cylinder pressure, the boiler pressure is just above that manual opening for the butterfly fire doors. It's a dual phase, so it opens to both the fireman and the engineer. And you could that the Baldwin throttles were fabricated by Baldwin in their shop, and they were a little clumsy. If you open the engine wide open, the pistol grip would actually be behind the engineer's head. So that's when they got the Lima engines, they used a different format. These are just some assorted shots. One of the Limas, upper left, under construction in 1949. There's just a detailed shot of the 1954, one of the Baldwin engines, and you see the front of a tender at the Lima shop with the auger for the stoker, and then on the right, that's the back of the one of the Lima locomotives with a double drawbar. There's one that was a primary drawbar, and then the second one was a safety. Well, when the LN decided to get the first 14 M1s, they were looking at maybe a system-wide locomotive initially, but their system just didn't have the wheel loading capacity to handle it like a super large locomotive, particularly along the Gulf coastlines. And there were other constraints, including a drawbridge at Decatur, Alabama, that Southern operated. So they ended up splitting an order for new motive power between 14 new specialized 284s that became the Big Emmas and these E6s. I think there were, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there were 16, there were 8 pairs. They came as AA. But the black and white shot is the first run of 450A and 450B. That's at Bowling Green. And you can see that was quite a buzz. That was the first mainline diesel electric on the L&N. Up until that point, all they had were a few switchers. So that's in May 42. That color shot's a rare one down in Alabama, I think, and it's probably late 40s vintage. Just for fun, because the L&N considered a really modern 484 design, at some lull in the work I was doing on the book, I used Photoshop to take this photo of 1967 below and morph it into a Super 484 that the L&N never had, with larger drivers and, of course, high-speed booster and all the necessary mechanical changes. So there's I numbered it 450, which was in the same general number series as the L1 Mountains. So there's my make-believe L&N 484. And by golly, that's a good-looking locomotive. It kind of reminds me of some of the similar size engines on the Rock Island, the Missouri Pacific, maybe Santa Fe. But if a Big Emma couldn't make it to New Orleans, I don't think one of those 484s could have made it much south of Cincinnati. That was a big locomotive, but that was just for fun. And we didn't put that in the book. Uh, I'll allude to this a little later on, but the L&N and it as a part of its motive power purchases and expenditures to upgrade the coal fields of Eastern Kentucky in the late 40s, anticipating a big coal boom, purchased five low-geared uh, F3 cab units from EMD. They were released because of a cold strike and were used in test services between, well, they got all over the system, but they were particularly used head to head against an M1 between Cincinnati and between DeCourcy and Louisville, in South Louisville, in comparative fast freight service. So there's one of those going by HK Tower at Anchorage, probably in 1949. Well, the M1s first showed up on the KY in 1942. This one is at approaching Grant's Tunnel, south of Spring Lake, on the approach to the big yard at DeCourcy, and it's northbound. And this is fairly easy run for the engine because it's mostly level or slightly downgrade following the Licking River. And he's probably got maybe 125, 130 coal loads behind him. Those are, of course, 50-ton cars, but that's a lot of tonnage. I know Chad will want to mention this engine in the upper left because he has the number plate. That's number 1963. That's one of four M1s that were equipped with steam lines and air communication signal lines for passenger service. This is one at North Cabin at Winchester. It's in obviously in freight service, and the one on the lower right is one of the Lima engines. I think it's northbound on the KY around Morning Spring or somewhere down in there. Morning View. Probably the best place to watch an M1 in action was on Winchester Hill between Ford, Kentucky, and top of the hill at Patio. These massive double-headed coal trains would come out of Corbin with two M1s on the front, usually 115 to 120 loads. And then they would stop here and pick up a third M1 behind the caboose. While they were doing that, the lead engines would cut off, take water, and then recouple. And then when everything was ready to go, they would get underway. And this is at Riverside, just past Ford. There's the 1961 and another M1 literally just getting up away. You can see the sand dropping down on the in front of the drivers. And man, I wish this thing had sound. I'm sure it was incredible. There's one of the pusher M1s behind a caboose out of Ford. That caboose is made of wood. They did have a steel underframe, thank God, and to show the faith that the L&N crewmen had in those cabooses, there are three of them riding the caboose. One of them must be the brakeman on the pusher. There's a guy waving from the cupola, but there, here he is shoving full throttle with the booster engaged going up Winchester Hill. The shot in the upper right is a northbound fast freight at North Cabin. And to fill in some gaps that we had in photography, I used some of my paintings, and the one on the right, or one on the right, lower right, is on Crooked Hill. So that in this time, this would have been the fall of 1944. So the 1964 would have been brand new out of Baldwin. The train coming at us is first 33. That'd be the south one, and that's a 482 on the front. One of my favorite shots on the left is on my home area, the Cumberland Valley Division, and that's at Josephine. And he's about 3 miles outside of Norton, Virginia, with a fast freight out of Corbin. This is train 55. Upper right's on the CV at Ponza, Kentucky, not far from Pineville. And the lower right is an interior shot of a CV engineer at Cumberland, Kentucky, probably in 1954. Those F units I mentioned were primarily used in pusher service up Elkatawa Hill, which locally, by the way, is pronounced Elkatoy. But they shoved up the hill from Gentry up to the top at Yaden. So this is the rear of a train on the left, and he's ready to be shoved. And the train that's passing with a J4 282, that's a southbound empty train. Lower left, that's number 1950. the original engine at Hargett with the empty train. Upper right's number 1980, shoving a coal train out of Ravenna, probably around 1953, I think. And as I mentioned, four of them were used in passenger service. Upper left is at Paris, Kentucky. It's southbound, uh, I think 33. That's the all Pullman section of the Southland, except for a rider coach and a diner. So everything else is Pullman's. This is between the Midwest and primarily the west coast of Florida. On the far right is number 1962. That was the engine used on June 24th, 1956, for a Cincinnati to Ravenna round trip excursion to raise money to build what ultimately became Kentucky Railway Museum. Lower left, that's one of my paintings I did of a gathering at Corbin. It was a good way to include an M1 on first 32. You can see the firemen's putting up the green uh, flags because he'll have a following section. And that engine on the right is 2132. That's the engine that's displayed almost at that spot today. Well, ultimately, the end came. The last M1 operated, as far as we know, November the 3rd, 1956, um, from Ravenna to DeCourcy. The L&N apparently kept, from what we gather, all 42 of the tenders, and they were used for various things. They were used in maintenance, way service. A large number of them were converted to tankers, like in the upper left, and they would take diesel locomotive fuel to outlying terminals, small terminals. The one below had been converted to a pollution control car. They would pick up sludge from outlying terminals, and this one, Corbin, had take it to a central processing facility in Louisville. And that one on the right is that's Canadian Pacific 2839 at just above Natural Tunnel. But you might note the auxiliary tender is an M1. So there's a big M on the southern. You can't tell, but I'm in the cab on that. And ultimately, the end came. They were systematically pulled out of service, stored, and scrapped, except for the tenders. And these shots, amazingly, were taken in June 1959, and they're at a scrapyard just west of downtown Cincinnati. And there's a couple of M1s on the left, and up the right, you can see the uh, drivers or throttle bearings that have been pulled out of something that's been scrapped before. So that's a real broad brush view of it. If you'd like to order one of the books, if you don't have it already, you can go to our website as shown there. And if you pull it up, you can see store, and you can order your copy. It's hard. It comes in hardcover, soft cover, and I can't. It's discounted, but I don't want to quote the price. I didn't make a note of it, but it's a good deal, and we still have several copies in stock. I think the publisher has sold out, however, and I learned from Chad that Kentucky Steam's uh, allocation, they've sold those out as well. Um, but just so you know, Charlie, all three, both Charlies and myself donated all of our time and energy, as did everyone in the society, and there were many other contributors that are listed in the front of the book. And the revenues that we've made from the sale of the book go to support our archives in Chattanooga. That's on the campus of the Tennessee Valley Railway Museum. So that's pretty much it. I know at some point my buddy Charlie B raised his hand, so I'll shut up and I will stop my screen share. All right.
All right, thank you, Ron. Let
Sure.
me let me get going here. My portion of the program. Talk a little bit about the Big Emma hardware that we know exist, and talk a little bit about the differences on what we have left of the L&N M1s. As Ron said, Unfortunately, all 42 of the locomotives were scrapped. The Limas were just barely 10 years old when they started getting scrapped. They only ran for 7 years on the L&N, so they were just broke in. As Ron mentioned, this is a locomotive near and dear to my heart, L&N 1963, which was one of the four locomotives equipped with steam lines. This is actually, we'll see a picture here in a little bit, was my very first number plate that I was able to acquire, and really, I guess, got the ball rolling in me collecting locomotive hardware. So we'll start with Big Emma builder plates and start with the first ones built, which was Baldwin. You will notice that these builder plates are the typical 9 1/4 width Baldwins, but like all later Baldwins, they had the ring, as they call it, that took the shape of the jacketing and the curvature of the smoke box. One thing that we have noticed is a lot of the Baldwin plates have been marked by a collector. Might have been favorite. I'd have to double check the list. These might have been favorite pieces, but have this stenciling on the back with the locomotive that it came from. You'll also notice one thing that I started in my research on Big Emma hardware is the one on the upper left-hand side, 64613, which is from L&N 1958. That is the as-delivered paint that came from Baldwin. That shot that Ron had of 1954 sitting at Baldwin, you will see that they were painted black with silver accents. These were cast iron plates, not bronze, built obviously during the war, so brass was primitive. The plate on the right is a very unique plate. That is off L&N 1962, which pulled the famous excursion for the Kentucky Railway Museum from Cincinnati to Ravenna that Ron mentioned earlier. You'll notice that these plates all, at least the two, have been painted silver. And one thing I want to point out, even though they weren't like this in service, when they left South Louisville after Class 3 repairs, South Louisville kind of gaudied them up, and you could see very clearly the Baldwin builder plate has been painted silver on 1967 after receiving her Class 3 repairs at South Louisville. This is just a fantastic shot. Ron, I think this is a favorite shot, if I'm not mistaken, that
Correct.
appeared as a near centerfold in the middle of classic trains, which still resides in my bathroom. But this is just a fantastic shot of M1 fresh out of the shop. It's either had or going to go to the slip track and get broken in, which if you've ever seen Jim Herron's reflection of the L&N has some fantastic footage of the way that South Louisville would break these engines in when they came out of their repairs. You'll also notice that they went as far to paint the silver back on the driving wheels and then put the stars on the center of the axle to indicate the roller bearings as L&N practice. Next up, we've got some examples of the Lima Hamilton builder plates, which are actually highly desirable, not only for L&N collectors like myself, but steam collectors in general. There's very few steam engines built domestically by the merged Lima Hamilton Corporation. Basically, you had the nickel plate, the C&O Alleghenies, the C&O Greenbriers, and the L&N M1s come to mind that were built in the 48-49 time frame, including basically the only steam locomotives built for a major railroad domestically by Lima Hamilton in 49 were the M1s and the final nickel plate Berks, which included 779, which was the last steam locomotive to leave Lima. L&N 1991 actually was scheduled to leave, but there were some delays on 779 that caused it to be the last one to leave Lima, and I guess ultimately saved. I've always wondered if 1991 truly was the last one to leave Lima, if it'd been here today and not 779. One thing I'll point out is the January, February, March sequence of delivery dates. There is April 90, L&N 1990 and 1991 had April of 49 builder plates, and I have not been able to locate those builder plates. I know for a fact that the 1991 number plate exists. It was in the favorite auction. I know its whereabouts, but have not found the builder plates. You gotta think they're out there somewhere. Something else that's kind of unique about the builder plate on the upper right hand side, 9360, you'll notice the cracked corner in the left hand side. That is off L&N M1 1981, which was actually the first M1 scrapped by the L&N after a couple of years of service. And Ron, you can maybe talk about the wreck that led to 1981's demise and what I think ultimately led to the cracked builder plate there.
Do you want me to talk about it now?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, I think it was in 1954. The 1981 was assigned on the Cumberland Valley Division and was marked up to take a coal train from Lynch, Kentucky, back to Corbin, and this was up in the wee hours of the morning, and so it would have been, extra 1981 north. And actually, a good friend of mine who's passed away many years ago was the head brakeman, George Britton. So a lot of this stuff was related to me personally by George, who almost gave up on railroading because of it. But uh, as they as they left Cumberland, Kentucky, and headed to downgrade to Lowell, it's downriver, and so they kicked the brake off and they just rambling down the railroad. There's only one tunnel on the entire line between Corbin and Lynch, and that was it's called Gap Ridge, and it's at Ray, Kentucky. And a large rock and a boulder had broken loose and fallen at the mouth of the south end of the tunnel, which would be the one they were approaching. Uh, that'd be the east end of the tunnel, actually geographically. But anyway, it was in their way. And when the headlight hit it, the boulder was partially blocking the portal, and so they struck it at a pretty good rate of speed, and it skewed the engine into the side of the tunnel and went in sideways, kind of sideways, and was followed in there by 8 hopper cars. And they were all wedged in there, as my grandfather would say, tighter than Dick's hat band. And George talked to me about he and the fireman and the engineer crawling through all that stuff in the darkness out the other side to get away from it before they were afraid the boiler would explode. So it had a pretty hard lick, and when the engine was finally fished out of there and taken back to South Louisville, they evaluated it, and it was too late in steam, even though they got a figure on casting a new cylinder saddle and cylinders. They just scrapped it, and so that's I didn't realize you had that plate, but that's a rare one. You're muted. I'm through. Did you hear me? I think you're on mute.
Sorry, guys. My apologies here. Let's it's up everything locked up on me. Can you hear me okay now, Ron?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about this. We'll try again here. Okay. Sorry about that. Brief delay. All right. One other thing I wanted to add about the builder plates on the Limas, for those of you familiar with Lima plates, all of them had the curvature and the pads on the back. I'm sorry, I don't have a picture of the back of the Lima plates, but had the curvature similar to the Baldwin plates for the smoke boxes. The plate in the middle, the March of '49 plate, when plates left Lima, they did have the typical lima red with white trim, and of course, after a couple of runs, that was long gone. But that is a replica resembles what it would have looked like after a couple of trips up and down the KY or the EK, and the heat and the soot got to it. In typical L&M fashion, which continued through the diesel era, um, they applied class plates to both the Baldwin and Lima M1s. On the left-hand side, you will see an example of an L&N M1 class plate that would have been affixed to the cab from Baldwin. And on the right is a version that would have been applied to the Limas. The difference, and we'll talk about it more in just a second. The Baldwin locomotives, both the number plates and the class plates were cast by Lima, or excuse me, by Baldwin. And on the Limas, they were actually cast by South Louisville and sent to Lima for application. And I will point out that the Baldwin class plate on the left belongs to longtime collector Ron Muldowney, who is instrumental to all of us plate collectors in tracking this stuff. So that's a tough class plate to find is the Baldwin version. Now let's get into number plates a little bit. As mentioned, the Baldwin plates actually are different than the Lima plates. You will see the class leader, again, that came from the Jack Favorite collection, currently belongs to Ron Muldowney, 1950. You will notice 1955 is a pretty neat plate that is in as removed condition. And then mentioned earlier the 1963 plate, which was my first builder plate or number plate that I was able to acquire down on the bottom. L&M practice was to paint the background of all of their number plates red for any locomotive that had steam lines applied to it. 1950, for whatever reason, has a red background, and it had it that way in the Favorite collection. I don't know if somebody had painted it before Jack got it, or what the artist liberty was there. But that's kind of an interesting background there. It should have a black background consistent with the freight locomotives. Obviously, 63, as mentioned, was one of the four that had steam lines, so the red background is correct on it. The Baldwin plates, as I mentioned, were cast by Baldwin and not South Louisville. If you ever get to handle one, there's no doubt they're the real McCoy because they're about twice as thick as a Lima Hamilton, one of the Lima Hamilton number plates. In addition to that, Baldwin cast these I guess mounting pads into the plates. So when you see a Baldwin plate, it should have the mounting pads, with one exception I'll talk about here in just a little bit. Um, the correct dimensions, if you have a Baldwin front number plate, first off, I have my email address in this presentation. Please send me an email and let me know you have it. But all joking aside, this is the correct measurements for a Baldwin plate. They're 18.5 inches long. And one of the key giveaways, and I'll have a comparison here in a second, is the center bolt to center bolt dimensions is exactly 17 inches. Here's a couple of examples of the limas. Again, if you just look at the bolt holes, you can tell the difference in the thickness of a lima front number plate and the Baldwin front number plates. Again, these were cast at South Louisville. They're absolutely identical to any front number plate off the L&N that you have handled or seen, including any of the Mikados or the Pacifics, the rectangular plates that were cast at South Louisville. All of them are the exact same dimensions as those plates. Bolt holes are the exact same as well. You could take a J4A 1800 something number plate and put it over one of these Lima plates, and they would line up perfectly. And then here is the difference in the bolt hole patterns, 15 inches for the Lima. They're still the same length, 18 and a half inches. And one of the telltale signs I have found, if you can find a plate in as removed condition or one that the back hasn't been cleaned on that with its original patina, is all of these number plates, and you can see it on the left, have the kind of the wear mark where it was mounted up against the headlight bracket for service. And obviously, you can see the soot and the grime forming the outline there around the bolt holes where it was mounted under the headlight. And then finally, here's once again the comparison between the two with the dimensions and how you can tell the difference between the Baldwins and the Limas. And in addition to just sheer weight, it's obvious that that the dimensions are a little bit off if you put them side by side or over top one another. And like anything in collecting, there's always some one-offs. So an interesting plate on the left is L&N 1969, which is on the surface looks like a Lima plate, but that is actually belonging to the last Baldwin built, and that is a South Louisville recast plate. And you might think that, well, it's a repop or it's fake, but the bolt hole pattern actually matches up perfectly with a Baldwin. In addition to that, I have seen pictures in the L&N archives of 1969 sitting in Ravenna, and you could tell the Baldwin plate, the original Baldwin plate, was hanging on by a loose thread. It was actually hanging loose. So at some point, I'm thoroughly convinced that that plate was lost or beyond repair, and South Louisville just simply cast up a new plate to replace it with, and made the bolt holes match perfectly for the Baldwin headlight bracket. On the right is, to our knowledge, and through photographic evidence, is the only L&N M1 to wear the Roman numeral font that some L&N locomotives wore. Ron, to my knowledge, we have no idea why this was made, other than maybe somebody poured in the cast to send to Lima just had an affinity for 1978 and wanted to make it the Roman font. I've never seen a picture of 1978 with the traditional L&N font. I've only seen pictures of it wearing the Roman numeral font. And this plate was actually found about a half a mile from DeCourcy Yard. And it was found in an estate sale a few years ago. So it makes it a very unique plate.
Chad,
Yes, Ron.
uh, the LN stopped using that font. It's a railroad Roman, and they stopped using that font generally for number plates maybe in the early 20s. So they were using the more modernized font from the mid 20s on. So that was a rare deal. But I personally, I think it's cooler.
Yeah, definitely. And here's a great shot of 1978 in Corbin. You can see the diesels have already arrived, but with her wearing her Roman numeral font, so or railroad Roman font, and clear evidence that it did wear it. But again, I would love to see a photograph if 1978 was delivered with this plate, or if this was something that was replaced at South Louisville somewhere along the lines. I'd not
This
seen it yet.
this shot is that's actually the roundhouse at South Louisville.
Oh, sorry,
It's
sorry. And it looks like 1954, maybe 84 is sitting back there.
Yeah, they wouldn't fit the turntable. They never went into the roundhouse. So you saw an M1 at South Louisville. You generally find it on one of these tracks in here.
So, like anything in Railroadiana, unfortunately, we do have to deal with some reproductions with L&N M1 hardware. Um, Right now, I have not heard of any known reproduction builder plates out there, either Baldwin nor Lima Hamilton. I'm not saying, again, this is just what I personally known through my research, so never say never. But unaware of any known builder plates that exist reproduction wise. I know of no Baldwin reproduction number plates. I think part of that is the sheer cost of trying to reproduce one of these Baldwins. And again, they're twice as thick as a Lima with those pads. They would be next to impossible to reproduce. Again, not saying it can't be done with enough resources, but they to my knowledge they have not been done. The two Lima front number plates that I know have been reproduced are 1971 and 1978. The interesting thing about the reproductions, in typical reproduction fashion, when you take the real one, or you take a pattern off of one and try to make a new pattern, the new ones generally come out smaller. And in this case, both of the reproduction number plates that I know exist in bronze, both are 18 inches in length, and they should be 18 and a half inches. Generally, you will find, particularly in the 1978 reproductions, that the bolt holes are randomly drilled. They should be at 15 inches. I think whoever reproduced them or who were making them as novelty items, obviously didn't really care, or wanted to be exact for the most part. But again, as I showed you on the Lima front number plates, there should be 15 inches precisely between the center bolt holes. And I've not seen a reproduction number plate that's consistent. Now, again, not saying it's not out there, but it should be consistent. And here is an example of the real 1978 plate and one of the reproduction 1978 plates side by side. You can see the very distinct difference in the length, and then the distinct difference in just the crispness of the numbers. And I would point particularly to the 7. You can see just the top, the real one that's on the top is much more crisp with narrower lines and edges than the reproduction below. You'll also note that the reproduction plate hasn't had the hole drilled yet, and there's one, I guess, starter there in the upper left-hand corner, but they haven't been drilled out yet. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about the M1's whistles. So the M1s had, as far as I know, Ron, the only, I guess, air actuator operated whistle. Again, they were the most modern steam on the L&N, so you couldn't quill them. They didn't have a rope. They simply had an on-off switch. The whistles that were applied to the Baldwins originally kind of stood up and down, where the Limas, I call them more skint back, if you will. They were more at an angle. On the far left, you'll see kind of the big 3 known L&M whistles. The one on the far left, the whistle on the far left on the red L&M box, is an L&N 5 chime off L&N Mountain 417. The mountains, the 22 mountains run, were the only mountains that, or excuse me, the only locomotives on the L&N that wore five chime whistles. Those were actually cast at South Louisville. So that is a very unique whistle. Doesn't sound that good. We've blown it at whistle blow, and it's just a common sound. The L&N whistle in the middle, the solid bronze whistle is an L&N passenger whistle. And then on the far right is the L&N freight whistle, which is the exact, as far as the bell goes, the top of the whistle is identical to the Emma whistles, with the exception of a couple of things. One, the four L&N steamline equipped M1s had passenger whistles equipped when they were in passenger service. And you will notice a lot of the shots of 1962 on the excursion from Cincinnati to Ravenna. They had taken the passenger whistle off of it because, again, the diesels had passenger service, but they put a passenger whistle back on 1962 for that trip and then took it back off because the Cincinnati Railroad Club is in possession of the whistle that came off 1962, and it actually has the freight dimensions on it. So the freight whistle that is on the right hand side on the box, that is an M1 L&N freight whistle. It is off a Lima, and the reason we know it's off a Lima is the bell and the top is cast in bronze. And Ron, I think in your copious notes that you and Charlie Bucola and Charlie Kastner dug up, found the actual order that the Baldwin M1s had cast iron tops as far as the whistle bells go, and that would be typical with a order in the middle of the war. And then the Lima Hamilton whistles had bronze tops. So, to my knowledge, that is the only L&N freight whistles cast in bronze, and the whistle that you see there before you does have a bronze top. So that's how we know it came off of Lima.
Where did the passenger whistle's bronze? Is it not?
Yeah, the passenger whistle solid bronze as well. The mountain whistle on the left and the freight whistle on the right, the tops are bronze, or excuse me, are cast iron.
You know,
Um,
I had thought, that those L1 whistles were Nathan's, but you say they were cast at South Louisville.
yeah, they were cast at least the bowls were cast at South Louisville because they've got the South Louisville casting numbers in the bowls, the
Okay.
LB with the serial number. And here's a couple more detailed shots for those of you that are interested in the whistle. You'll notice that it had a just off the shelf Nathan bottom on it that they actually could have added, one of the bonnets or the screens there to deflect the sound and the steam escaping if they had wanted. L&N never did that, but nickel plate and C&O, a lot of the roads did actually add those deflectors, but that's what those mounting brackets are for if L&N wanted to do that. But again, that's an off the shelf stock part from Nathan with the air actuator there. And with that, this is the end of my portion of the presentation, and we'll end the show or the slideshow there, and open it up for questions, comments, and commentary. Can't throw tomatoes at us through the screen, but we'll be happy to answer any questions that you all have. Again, at the bottom, you should see the chat feature. You can raise hand and ask a question directly, or type a question into the Q&A.
I did answer a private question while you were doing your bit. There was a question about the differences between the Lima and the Baldwin engines, and he noted that the tender trucks and the drivers pretty obvious, but the answer is that there were a lot of differences, and you can't fully appreciate that. Charlie Bacola and I talked about that a lot. If you put the spec sheets down between Baldwin's and Limas, man, they were just like a gob of things with different power reverse, all kinds of little fittings, throttles, different stokers, different angle on the slope sheet, coal pusher, not a coal pusher, and on and on and on. It was just lots of things. Uh, you know, boiler washout plugs, This one, no, we're going to change this to this, change that to that. So there are lots of things you can't even see.
And if I'm not mistaken, Ron, didn't the L&N and Lima pay Baldwin for some patented parts to use on the M1? I think the sand dome, which was pretty unique to the M1s, I think they had to pay Baldwin off to use it again.
Yeah, there was already a pretty open dialogue. Of course, Baldwin ended up folding in from a corporate standpoint with Lima Hamilton. But there was already a pretty open dialogue with Baldwin on some of those details. Uh, One of the things many things I didn't mention is that Baldwin and Commonwealth Castings tried to sell the L&N on the idea of a pedestal or centipede tender on those the six engines in the war, but the L&N said no. That would have been the kind of tender that you would find behind a big boy. I can imagine I can imagine that tender going around the Y at on some of the little branch lines on the CV. Uh, but anyway, they stuck with those tenders.
All right. I think Chris Mayhew asked if the Cincinnati Railroad Club can get one of those boxes. So, Chris, we'll have to talk when it's springtime, when Chad can get get the equipment out to make one.
I'm getting some questions here.
Yep. Question is, bells or headlights still around? Headlights, yes. We know for a fact headlights still exist, and they used a off the shelf Powell National headlight. Um, Ron, I think you know of a couple that are out there. I know of one in the Cincinnati area. Of course, the Cincinnati Railroad Club does have the original headlight from 1962. Another thing that we know exists, there's quite a few. How they were saved, I do not know in the course of scrapping, or if they were removed when the Emmas were lingering around DeCourcy. The glass inserts for the headlights with the numbers on them, those exist as well. I've seen those out there. As far as bells, again, that was kind of an off the shelf. The brackets weren't marked L&N or anything like that. You can find L&N bells out there, particularly the ones off of the consolidations and the Mikados that usually have a lot of numbers stamped in them. And the reason there's a lot of numbers stamped in them is when they came to South Louisville or any shop for repair, they took the bell off and then just put the next bell right back on it and then stamped the locomotive number in it. I personally have never seen a bell with an corresponding M1 number in it, but that doesn't mean one doesn't exist.
I've got a I've got a general question. Since you've got a lot of collectors on here, what's the what's the incidence of collecting things that I might find appealing, like uh, classification lamps, the throttle, air brake handles, gauges, any of that stuff. Anybody cabbage some of that?
Yeah, I would love I'd love to find a known particularly the gauges, and Jameson Kahn is on this Zoom presentation, and he and I have talked about it. But again, it's going to be modern gauges similar to what N&W had and used a lot, that again modern steam, but I've never seen a throttle body for an M1, but that would be a neat item to have. Let's see. We got a question coming in from David Wilkins.
Oh, I happen to have a glass number plate insert, and the gentleman that gave it to me, I met him when I was in St. Louis. He had gone to school at the University of Cincinnati, and he started college in 1959. And the woman he dated his freshman year of college, her dad worked at one of the scrap yards in Cincinnati and gave him the entire headlight to 1961. And flash forward to 4 years later, he's married to a different woman and heading off to his career in St. Louis at Anheuser-Busch, and didn't have enough room in his 56 Ford for the entire headlight, so he took the glass number plate.
No.
Uh, so I have it. I mean, I wish I'd. and he had left it in his fraternity house, and I found out what fraternity he was a member of, and I contacted the fraternity through their national office, and nobody had seen it, and they'd even tried to reach back to alumni, and nobody seemed to remember it. But it's kind of neat. It still has soot on it. It still has soot on it, and that there's that Jack Fravert picture of 1961 sitting at DeCourcy, I think in like May or June of '56, and it's as dirty as can be, and that's pretty much probably right before it's retired, and that's how it is. So,
Yeah.
Hey, David, great article in the RNLHS magazine.
oh, thank you.
Great. I was really happy to see that. Uh, Dan Cupper sent an early draft to me and said, "Do you know this guy? Is this? What do you think about this?" I said, "Yeah, I know him." And I said, "This is dead on accurate. It's great." So congratulations. It's not easy to get in that magazine. That's long form with footnotes and bibliography and a DNA sample. You got to have it all in there.
Yeah. So, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I wrote that like in 2002 for college, and have been sitting on it for years. And during the pandemic, I got bored, and I had long lost the Word copy of it, and I had found a PDF of it online somewhere. I was able to painstakingly convert it back to Word and re-edit it and everything. So I'm glad to see it. But it's about the L&N. It's about the L&N in World War II and L&N railroaders who went to Europe. So yeah, it's worth checking out. Railroad History, issue 231.
Yeah, it's great. I appreciate it, and I one day I'll do something for them. But it's not your garden variety magazine article. You have to literally show your work. And not that I'm not reluctant to do that. Uh, I digress slightly, but we Dan Cupper was helpful in advising us on format for bibliography, and he insisted, hey Ron, if you want to be taken very seriously at this, it needs an index. I said, oh God, oh please no. So we managed to get an index and a full bibliography, and in there, I think Charlie Bacola would agree. We're glad we did. It it verifies our sources, and you can go back and find all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, having to do an index today's got to be a lot easier than it was years ago. I once met a guy whose wife did that professionally back in the back before you had computer tools to do it, and that was a real job. And I know it's a pain, but it makes it. I've reviewed books for RNLHS for about a decade now, and that's kind of one of the criteria they want you to kind of hit on. Does it have endnotes, footnotes, or an index?
Uh, in our case, the index was developed by Steve Kaywood, who's one of our members, a board member. He lives in Pineville. Steve went through all the text and picked out the keywords. And he had, page after page of numbers and keywords, places, and so forth. And the publisher had a program that would search those keywords and say this is on page so and so and so and so. So it's easier, but it's still not easy
Yeah.
because you have to make a determination of what's important. And Steve did that work for us.
That's good work, and it's a good publisher. It's a good publisher. I the first book of theirs I bought was their book on the Delaware and Hudson last year, where they did kind of the end of the Delaware and Hudson, the last probably like 25 years of the railroad. It was a really well done book, just from both the research and just how it looks. One thing I liked about the Emma book too is that laying out books I've noticed. The camera's not on, but I'm down in my basement. I'm surrounded by railroad books, and laying out books is an artwork. You just can't. Not anybody can like put a book together and make sense and make the pictures look good and everything like that. And the publisher that worked with you all did a fantastic job of not only taking a very readable and informative text, but actually making it look good. Is something that you just can't find easily these days.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm going to pass it on to him. He's trained in that. And
Yeah,
early on, we had those concerns like, how will this look? Because layout, I'm kind of an artsy kind of guy, so layout is important to me. Although I'm not a graphic designer. I've stayed in Holiday Inn Express a few times, but I'm not a graphic designer. So Rudy and I had conversations. He said, "What do you want it to look like?" And so I took photos of different books that I liked to show. I said, I want something like this or something like this, and just went back and forth. He and I came up with the idea of having the page numbers in a little replica of an L&N Herald, steam engine Herald. That's something we both came up with. But I'm glad you said that because I think he did a really good job. I couldn't find anything to complain with. We talk about little minor things, but every time we'd get a layout, Charlie McCullough and I were happy with it. It
Yeah,
looked good.
It makes
yeah,
it easier.
It is, yeah. I didn't have
Yeah.
to worry about it.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done if I'd done it. I would have done it on paper, and it was said, something like this, and put this box up there. I mean, I know it's kind of like pornography. I can't describe it, but I know what it is when I know what it is if I see it.
Thanks, David.
no
Appreciate it.
problem, no problem,
Thank you.
Chad.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions?
Hey, Chad, I got a quick question. This is Joseph again,
Yeah.
Ron. Hey, I know we were talking about the Eagle before the meeting got started. Is there any evidence that the L&N ever decorated their engines like the Southern did?
Uh, Very modestly. Yeah, the Southern Southern allowed. I mean, they were just like nuts. They let anything, just about anything, would go as long as it didn't grossly, uh, bother the safe operation of the locomotive. So
Yeah.
they allowed engineers and roundhouse crews to be pretty extravagant. The LN was pretty standard on everything, pretty boring actually. I mean, the more flamboyant places might paint white or silver tires on passenger engines. That was about as far as they did. I don't recall seeing an eagle on an LN locomotive, a photograph at least. Don't remember one personally. Although I did, I actually had a cab ride in an M1, so that qualifies me a little bit. Not very far, but I had a cab ride in 1956. Uh, but no, they didn't do that.
Well, I
Okay.
think I think
I was
part of it
always,
too. Sorry, Joseph. I think part of it too was the difference. L&N, as far as I know, Ron never really assigned locomotives to crews like the Southern did for a
No,
long
no,
time.
no.
So
Everything
there was
was
no personalized reason to do it.
no locomotives were assigned to divisions, but it was and a certain locomotive may come up on a passenger local over and over and over again, but it wasn't Uncle Fred's locomotive. He may be the regular engineer, but he may want to go down and polish it a little bit. Sometimes they put on special whistles for these guys. They did do that.
yeah. Okay. I was just always curious. And just if I can be allowed one more real quick personal question. Uh, a while back, I saw talk about decorations. I saw a picture you posted of a painting you did for Shelby Lowe of David Fant's engine with the Bible number plate on the front. Did
Yeah.
you ever do any lithograph copies of that, or was that just a one off?
No, that was a personal job that I did for Shelby. He used it in it was in Trains
Yeah,
magazine. There's an article on it, and what I have is just as I did for all my paintings. I took a 35 millimeter slide, a few of them before I sent it off to him. So I've got that. But Shelby's been dead for many years. But uh, he provided all the photographs that I needed to work from on that.
yeah. Okay, okay. Thank you. Sorry to hijack the L&M presentation for a Southern
No,
guy.
no, no. Look. That's not my only gig.
Any other questions or comments? Well, seeing none, Ron, one more time, tell folks how they can get a copy of the book, which I like the fact that it's available in both hardback and paperback, which is really nice. So you can make the decision on what level of investment you want to make in the big Emmis.
Just go to lnrr.org and look for company store, and they'll have both versions there. Uh, I think the retail price, correct me if I'm wrong, for the hardcover is $90. I think theirs is 80 or something like that. Can't remember the soft cover. It might be 70 retail. I don't know, but I haven't looked at it. I just after this book was finished and we picked up the printed versions, it all washed away from me. All the paperwork and everything is now in the archives in Chattanooga. Charlie Bacola and I were mindful of all the digital stuff we created, images, correspondence, scans, and all this stuff. We dumped that all into this enormous folder. So it resides in his hard drive and our hard drive here. So we'll have that replicated. So one day, some enterprising person wants to go back and revisit this topic. Uh, you can go back. You can go to the LNHS, and with permission, they'll let you look in that box of Charlie Kastner's notes. You'll find my letter in there somewhere, and you can access the digital files because that's what we need to do is to pay it forward.
That's right. And one thing I will add about the book is there's something in it for everybody. If you want entertaining firsthand accounts and interviews, there's that. If you want technical data and nerdy specs, there's that. And the narrative to what David Wilkins was saying and the way the book is laid out is just beautifully done, and it just holds your attention all the way through. Selfishly, my two favorite engines along with the PS4 is it is an N&W Class A, and we have Ed King's wonderful masterpiece, the Mercedes Esteem. And this book, the Big Emma book, ranks right up there with those books. So
I'm glad you mentioned my buddy Ed. Ed is just one of many people that I consulted with because I wanted guys that knew steam better than me. So I talked to Ed. I talked to Howard Pincus, Steve Wickersham, uh, Ed Dickens, Union Pacific, the guys in charge of the steam program there, Steve Lee, uh, Gary Benson. Anybody that and these guys were extremely helpful, and they would network and they would answer the most, you know, arcane questions imaginable. And we would Charlie and I would laugh because we would chase down some rabbit hole to find some innocuous detail because we're in a hunt. We got to find this, and we did. And it was worth it. It was a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, a lot of fun.
And last pitch for the Railroadiana Collectors Association. Again, our website is railroadcollectors.org, and you'll find everything about our organization on that website. And Joseph does a great job. We also have a YouTube channel, so you can find our past presentations there, which is everything from postcards to Railroad China and Silver to Union Pacific. Along the lines that we did tonight, Union Pacific hardware off the big boys and the Challengers. So have a lot of folks interested in that. So again, yeah, Roy.
I got to check that out. I'm not a serious Railroadiana collector, but I do have some things that are personal for me. But one of the things I got started on early is is clinkers from fireboxes of steam locomotives. I used to collect big clinkers. I had one from an M1, but I lost it over the years.
Yeah, see, that's the thing about it. Again, our organization, we have everybody that collects everything, so it's what it's all about.
That's almost like I collect horse manure.
If it's railroad marked, we probably have somebody that has it in their collection. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ron. Again,
thanks, Joe. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, everybody from the LNNHS to help make this possible tonight. We appreciate it, everybody. Hope everybody has a great night. See ya.
Good night. See ya.